The war happened right when my mom was finishing high school and my dad was in the army. Both their houses got burnt down, and then if you bring someone from 1700s to 2000 Times Square, this person is not going to be shocked by this environment. They will be so shocked that they might actually die.
What do you think is the most overhyped trend right now in AI? What do people believe in too much?
AI is actually not creating any value for company.
There are some extractive things that happen in crypto, and I think $85 million raise for Sentient doesn't help, right? Because there's this company that has a big bag of gold. Let me go see if I can get some, because that's how crypto works. This is maybe why it gets a bad rep in Silicon Valley.
My answer changed in the last maybe half a year. I think everyone expected AGI to come soon, but
all right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of An Open Conversation. Today, I'm here with my good friend, Antonio Knez. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. How are you feeling?
Feeling great. Yeah.
Out of 10?
9. Had a
really
good 12 hours of sleep last night. It wasn't too bad.
That's quite good. So this episode is going to be quite good then. So you and I went to Princeton together. I guess we were 1 year apart. I didn't know you, but I think you knew of me quite well and wanted to meet me. And now we happen to work together. Why don't you give us a walkthrough of your journey?
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in Croatia, and this was early 2000s. Croatia was still, there was this post-war, so Croatian War for Independence happened in the 90s. I had an interesting story. I think my parents had 10 times more interesting lives. The war happened right when my mom was finishing high school and my dad was in the army, even his senior year of high school. Both their houses got burned down, and then this period between, the war ended in 95, I was born in 99, and I think it was just this very interesting period of rebuilding the country, but also them building their lives from the ground up. And I was very fortunate to have wonderful parents. And I think this period instilled into me, but also into youth across Croatia, this very aggressive distrust towards the government and towards the institutions in general. I think this extends towards some of my attitudes, even in AI, and we can talk more about it later. But so Croatia, played water polo there, ended up playing at Princeton, did computer science at Princeton, and Pramod was one of my professors there. I really loved his classes. They brought him in to kickstart this blockchain set of courses there, and I think he did a really good job. So after Princeton, I went to Pepperdine in Malibu and played for 1 more year, did my master's in business. I was just getting ready to, I was finalizing actually a seed round for tokenization startup. We were trying to tokenize first real estate, but this generalized into private equity, sort of overall, wanted to optimize these secondary markets. And Pramod reached out, he was looking for engineers, and I'm sure it was similar with you, but I think Sentient has a really potent story, it's very compelling. And he sold me this narrative of AI needs to be decentralized, we're at this a precipice as a civilization, and this is the biggest problem that we're facing as civilization, and you should be working on this. And then I think this was also supplemented by 85 million seed round, which was okay, this is too good of an opportunity to pass up on. So started interviewing as an engineer, and at some point they told me, you're a product / business person, and I ended up as the first business hire at Sentient.
Awesome. So I'll ask a random question about your upbringing in Croatia. You mentioned how your parents went through this wartime and you were born as you were coming out of this. Do you carry that as a chip on your shoulder or anything? Has that affected how you view life, especially coming to the US?
In more than one way. I think the most interesting way it affected me, and I think about this lately a lot, because it's sort of related to what we're doing at Sentient, is, again, this distrust for human-led institutions. And the biggest example of these institutions are the governments, but also whenever you have, I think in the US especially, these big corporations in AI, it's probably companies like OpenAI, like Anthropic, like Perplexity. And time again, we learned that you cannot concentrate ridiculous amount of power within one organization. And again, seeing how governments quickly get corrupt made me very distrustful towards these kind of companies as well. And I think we're trying to fight this Exactly. So this like concentration of power, and this is why I wake up very energized working at Sentient.
Yeah, 9 out of 10, huh?
Yeah, 9 out of 10.
So I'll say one of the things that I find very impressive about you is like this sense of scrappy entrepreneurialness, I guess is the word. Like you read stories about like, I don't know, like Mark Cuban talks about how he did some trash bag thing and he would go around neighborhoods and sell trash bags, and like that kind of story you read about all the time, but I haven't seen it up close. And I think when I met you and heard how you grew up and what you've done, I think it registered. So I can give you an example. You talked about bringing like meat and cheese to the US to try and sell. And I was like, okay, that's a weird thing to do. And I was like, why would you do that? And you said, oh, it was insane margins, but the TSA bleeped it out. But yeah. So I think in this sense, you're very entrepreneurial. And you even talked about you were working on a startup, but you decided to join Sentient. So how did you get that spirit of entrepreneurialness? And then, why did you decide to leave that and go to Sentient?
Now I remember telling you this story. That was good memory. Yeah, my dad ran a construction company, and I think he just instilled this sense of you have to build something of your own within me. And someone once told me that it's not about how competent you are necessarily, but the biggest predictor in life is how much agency you have and how proactive you are. And this stuck with me from early on. And I always wanted to, as you said, sort of just keep chipping and something is going to happen. Something very interesting about Sentient that I really appreciate is that I don't think we're run as a traditional company. And you come in, you have a very vaguely defined role, and then it's sort of up to you how much you want to extend your responsibilities. And same thing happened with you, same thing happened with me. And you can really grow and shape what your role is as you go, and as you grow as well. That's something I really appreciate.
I think that's one of the things I'm very grateful for about Sentient. I guess, fun fact, I started as your intern for 24 hours. And then I think they saw my potential and promoted me to your boss.
I saw your potential. Yeah. They asked me.
I think the nature of your job is quite interesting, but why don't you walk through it first? What you enjoy about it, what you do?
I did computer science in college. I really wanted to do software engineering for maybe a year or two, but the plan was always to become a founder. And something very interesting about business development, especially at Sentient, because it's so tied to product, and in a way we're an ecosystem company. So you really, through business development, it's not just glorified sales, but you also shape what the company is and what the product is. I think my biggest goal for the first few months at Sentient was to map out the Web3 ecosystem. So Sentient needed to become this hub, this central point of AI crypto. And crypto functions in a very interesting way, where you have this social capital, social proof that comes with a large seed round. And then this gives you power to actually become, it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And so it was very easy to get access to everyone in Web3, especially through Sandeep. And I think we did a really good job there. But the second part, and maybe a more ambitious goal, is to become this coordination layer for AI, specifically open source AI in general. So the second stage of business development was proactively reaching out to these AI companies and figuring out what can blockchain and what can Sentient, in this sense, do for them. And I think we're up for some very, very interesting few months where we're going to show that we have tremendous value to offer to these open source communities.
Mm-hmm. So through the nature of your job, you've gotten to meet a bunch of people, a bunch of projects, a bunch of teams, a bunch of companies. I'm interested in hearing which people have been the easiest to work with, to make deals with. Maybe you don't have to name names. You can just maybe give the personality archetype, and who have been the hardest.
The one that I enjoy the most are the companies that look for actually, how do we create value together? Those are not necessarily the easiest to work out the deal, but this is where the value actually comes from. And then there's companies and projects that, especially in crypto, everything is about mindshare, and you have to show that you have your fingers everywhere. And these are the deals that get closed immediately. It's like, okay, like we're going to figure some touching point, we're going to close this, and then we're going to announce. But I would say that I'm not too big of a fan of this crypto dance that happens. The best kind of deals that came out so far are with these open source projects. So it's the question there is, how can we unlock this new dimension of scale through community-driven development? So we use a token to incentivize thousands of high-quality developers direction comes from you as an open source maintainer, you both on how to build out the repo, but also how to build on repo. What kind of workflow, if you have an agent framework, what kind of workflows do you want to see built? And I think these kinds of deals are the most interesting ones because you can structure them in a million different ways.
Right. Transitioning into open source AI business development, I think maybe you've gotten the sense that crypto doesn't have a great perception in the Valley. How have you adjusted to that? What do you do?
Yes. So in some way, it's about, and this is true, by the way, there's very tangible friction when you approach these.
Also,
AI.
is it fair?
To an extent, it definitely is. Like crypto is it's a wild place, but it's about showing them that you're actually building something and that you don't care about just optics and you want to create value together. And Sentient is in an exceptional place to do this, both because we built credibility over the last year through our research team. So it's not that we're just selling the story of a token, we're actually continuously shipping, and we're shipping state-of-the-art products and research. And then it's also about clever branding and tactics of saying you're not necessarily a crypto company, but you're an open source AI company. Our goal, and I truly believe this, our goal is to push open source AI forward. And token is just a tool to get us there. So when you pitch it this way, it's very easy to evangelize people because no one thinks that AI should be closed. Everyone shares my distrust of OpenAI and companies such as OpenAI. So it's very easy to evangelize them and activate them. And they actually like come to you and they say like, oh, like we want to contribute to this mission. So yeah, these were my takeaways in Silicon Valley so far.
Interesting. I'm curious to see how it continues, especially as Sentient move towards focusing on open source projects more and more. One thing I'm interested to hear is I want to hear about the red flags you have about people. You've met a wide variety of personalities. And you've taken, many, many meetings. I've seen your calendar stocked. I'm sure you have a list of markers or like even subconscious signals of like, okay, this meeting isn't going to be useful, or like, okay, this is not like the right team to do a deal with or work with.
Yes. I think people make mistakes sometimes of being very outcome focused when it comes to these meetings. BD and I think business in general should be about building relationships, and then you figure out how to create value together. And something that sets off this like alarm of, oh, like this relationship might not be actually conducive to something of value is when people are too extractive. When they come into the meeting, especially the first few months, everyone thought that we're just about giving free money to everyone. And you can sense when someone approaches and is trying to sort of just extract value from you. And then the second part, and this is something, a common theme in crypto, is that you have to learn how to figure out who's actually building something, who's in it just for the token and to make quick money on crypto, and who's trying to use blockchain to actually solve a problem that wasn't solvable before. So do those two things. Are people being extractive, and do they just want to extract value from you? And then the second thing, are they actually building something valuable?
Do you want to drop a name of who's?
Yeah, I'll share the list.
My experience in talking with other crypto projects is, I think you're absolutely right. This is maybe why it gets a bad rep in Silicon Valley, because there are some extractive things that happen in crypto. And I think $85 million raise for Sentient doesn't help, right? Like, because, there's this company that has a big bag of gold. Let me go see if I can get some. Because that's how crypto worked, right? And is it still working like that? How have you seen the shift?
I think it's changing. And AI actually helped it change because people are trying to figure out what the product market fit is for AI crypto projects. And there's this sense, and you can feel the shift in culture where people now actually feel we're onto something here. There's different use cases for blockchain as well, but AI, to me, is this one use case where blockchain can scale even from where it is right now, 1,000 or even bigger order of magnitude times. So people are just trying different things, figuring out where AI will need blockchain, be it through agent identity layer, be it through this coordination layer, be it through something around security and privacy. There's definitely a sense that we can scale blockchain even more. And for what sort of this crypto community gets from it is that AI has a very strong market pull as a technology right now. And blockchain has friction when it comes to implementation with enterprises within the public sector. And I think you can use AI to sort of as a backdoor to penetrate into these markets. If you pitch an AI project to an enterprise, they already want AI. They have infinite, appetite for AI. But with blockchains, there's 10 sort of mental barriers that you have to jump over to convince them to implement this. I think this is the shift that AI brought to crypto.
I see. And do you think AI crypto is an overhyped thing? Is it just a buzzword?
I think a lot of people are building the wrong thing for crypto AI. And crypto AI is suffering from huge fragmentation problem. Everyone wants to build a crypto assistant. And my takeaway from last almost a year of looking at these is that the level of sophistication is still not incredibly high. There's a few good products that actually provide some value to the user. What we realized is that there's a bunch of these agents that look at one type of data that's very interesting, that perform one type of analysis that's very interesting. And then the question that we wanted to answer is there some value in aggregating all of these? And this is what Sentient Chat will be. We're trying to aggregate all of these and then allow some sort of composition of intelligence and see if there's any emergent value coming out of it. And I think that we're on a good track to make something very interesting there. So the goal is to, and I'm sure Oleg on a different episode is going to expand more of this, but we build something, we set it as a foundation, we open source it, and then it's come one, come all. Everyone builds and hopefully we build an empire together. A very good parallel that I like to make is Sentient Chat has an opportunity and hopefully will be to ChatGPT what Linux was to Windows. So there was this period where closed source dominated, but just through, Linus was also a wizard. He built this foundation and then the community started building these modules and expanding Linux to where now it captures 85% of the market.
Right.
So hopefully open source dominates in this case as well over the long run.
Yeah. It's a very apt analogy. And I think it's one of the things that's, kept Sentient going, especially because it's like historically proven that open source will outperform closed source eventually. And like, if you think about it theoretically as well, it will happen.
An interesting point about AI here is that the timeline is shrinked. So given enough time, this will definitely happen. But if you have this free-for-all approach where everyone builds whatever they want, I think the timeline and this race towards AGI or singularity, it's just the timeline is too small. And this may not happen that open source dominates. And the mission of Sentient, in my view, is to provide this sharper direction for open source AI. So we act as a coordination layer. You need this sharp direction if you're going to compete with OpenAI, with Perplexity, with Anthropic, because they have much more clarity and much sharper direction in what they're building. So Sentient is this direction for open source.
Right. How much time would you give it for open source to figure it out?
My answer changed in the last maybe half a year. I think everyone expected AGI to come soon and to have this exponential development of AI continue. I think we're starting to stagnate a little bit, and investors also share this sentiment.
Yeah.
I still think it's sooner than most people think. Maybe 5-10 years max.
In 5 to 10 years, what will come? What is now the general question? What is your definition of AGI? What is coming in 5 to 10 years? Something
will completely change our day-to-day lives. I don't think you can define what this looks like, but there's a very interesting article. It was about how humans are notoriously bad at predicting this rate of change. And a thought experiment was that if you bring someone from 1700s to 2000 Times Square, this person is not going to be shocked by this environment. They will be so shocked that they might actually die of just how overwhelmed they are. But if they somehow live and they go back to 1700s and now they want to replicate this and they bring someone from 1400s to their whatever town, this person from the 1400s will be shocked, not as much. There's not this like overwhelming feeling of that you might actually die from the shock. And so the point was that this person from the 1700s now has to go maybe 2000 years back to replicate this. And the rate of change is exponential. And it's very likely that we just cannot predict what our lives are going to look like in 5 years.
Right.
So I don't know if I'm looking forward to that, but it will definitely be interesting.
Yeah. I can share some maybe off the camera context. So I think we talked about this a little bit. So we went to the water park, and there was there was some big slides, and I think you made the comment that similar, that you were like, bro, if like you transported someone from the 1900s to ride this slide, like they would die. And I pushed back heavily. I was like, bro, if you got like a Native American chief to ride this, like that guy is much more prepared to take on that fear and adrenaline compared to me. I didn't think about the exponential nature. I think it's right. I think there are some biological markers that people carry over that make them more fit for today's society.
In what sense?
So like if you take someone that went through wartime in like the 1600s, I think they're way more mentally fit to handle whatever changes are here. Maybe like the environment changes are harder. Like I can't imagine like Napoleon using an iPhone and even understanding what that means. But I think they are very adept at adapting.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways. But I also think we underestimate how much information, in terms of the volume, how much more information you intake compared to peasant from the 1700s. You probably intake in one day more information than an average peasant did in his entire lifetime. Both the channels through which you intake information, but also the amount of information is also going to change in the next few years.
Right.
And especially once you start talking, there's this like whole transhumanism movement. Who knows where this will go? In some way, I'm definitely scared. I do think, and a lot of people share this feeling that humanity is at a precipice. And I think our lives from reaching this one point where we cannot revert it, especially in terms of AI, will depend on how well we align it with the values of the humanity as a collective now. So this is where the work is being done. It's not like, oh, like we come up with this technology and then figure out how to use it. It's that we need to make sure that it's very well aligned with the values that we want it to be aligned to.
Hopefully you've seen that core sentiment carried across all the projects you've talked to in AI. What are some of the compelling trends that you've seen? You know, where is this going in 2 to 3 years? What are you most excited about? So what some of these companies are working on?
I think agent frameworks are constantly being improved upon. The takeaway from the last 6 months in the space seems to be that you need these bespoke workflows, and they need to be very specific and very clear. So I think scaling these workflows is going to be one theme that we see, giving more and more tools to these models to actually be able to build interesting workflows. There's a lot of stuff about alignment and security that needs to be figured out. I would love to see more conversations happening there. I think alignment was a very big theme maybe a year ago, but now it's sort of the narrative is for some reason shifting.
Yeah.
I would love to see more focus on alignment as well. Bespoke models as well. I think companies need, especially for these very specific niche use cases, you need more performant models for this respective use case, both to save costs and to improve performance.
I think you're absolutely right. Like 5-6 months ago, it felt like everyone was talking about alignment. And now it's like, oh, okay, it's completely gone. But I think it's cyclical because the way AI is progressing, people cannot just be fully focused on alignment. I think that's maybe something that Anthropic was their main thing, right? Like they would completely stop development if they didn't feel it was fully aligned. But the way it's happening, you will get a misaligned model, some misalignment every single time you release a new model. That's when you see it, for example, like Grok, maybe 2-3 months ago now, that's when alignment came back. And I'm sure we'll see it again when the next big model comes out.
Yeah, but I think these mishaps only show you how important alignment is. I think but what we need to think about is what if in the cases where alignment is done right and where the models are correctly aligned, we need to make sure that they're aligned to the right set of values. And if you have a small groups of people defining this for entire humanity, it's a very, very dangerous game to play. This needs to be done more transparently. This needs to be done in the open. This needs to be driven by the community. So the way I see AI development ideally going is community constantly iteratively aligning the model and coming to this consensus of what the model should be aligned to. And the stable state of sentient, at least on the model layer, is to have hopefully thousands of models that represent their own respective communities and that are fine-tuned for their own respective use cases. that would be an ideal outcome for me for Sentient, at least again on the model layer.
Right. This ideology is built on maybe not the assumption, but your belief that a democratic process for at least model alignment is much better than closed source companies controlling the alignment. So you have some faith in humanity to build a more aligned model for themselves than people controlling it enclosed.
Well, I think if you make it just like a simple democratic process, I think it can still be gamed, and it probably will.
Yeah.
I believe that humans are inherently corrupt, and they will succumb. The institutions where there's more humans will eventually succumb to some sort of corruption, moral, financial, whatever. And you need to have, and this is why I really like blockchain and token, is that you can construct these creative governance systems that are built with the assumptions that humans are corrupt. So there's circuit breakers, there's all sorts of ways where you can assure or at least mitigate, assure honest answer and honest inputs, or at least mitigate space for corruption.
Interesting. So we went on a little bit of a tangent. I asked you about, what are you most excited about? I want to hear what do you think is the most overhyped trend right now in AI? What do people believe in too much?
Not anymore, but this notion that we're going to have a behemoth of a model that can solve any problem and can do anything. This, if it comes ever, it will not come in the next few years. And I believe that once we reach AGI, it's actually not going to be this behemoth of a model. It's much more likely that we're going to reach some AGI-like experience by composing hundreds and thousands of agents, models, tools, etc. Their hype around specific things in AI has died. So at least in the last couple months.
It's just AI in general.
Yeah, I think people are trying a lot of different things and seeing what sticks. Yeah. Well, something that I read, this MIT study where AI is actually like not creating any value for companies. So maybe enterprise AI, but I don't think it's overhyped. I just think it needs to be readjusted. And this is something where we're also in a good place to do is like, okay, the way I see Sentient enterprise play is we figure out what the pain points are for businesses, and we figure out how we can leverage the community and the token to do something that closed companies can't.
Right.
And this comes with problems that require these like wide problem spaces. So these bespoke workflows are an example of this. So OpenAI, it's a huge company, but it's not in the business of creating these bespoke workflows for specific companies. And just because you require infinite scale to do this.
Right.
And what we can do is get these input from enterprise and then somehow coordinate developers communities to build these workflows, open source them. And then again, you have this iteration process where they get continually improved.
Interesting. So speaking about these large closed source corporations, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, the narrative has, and I think still is, that they are dominating and they will continue to dominate. They start ahead of the race and they will finish the race before open source even catches up. Comparing them to some of the smaller AI startups that you've talked to, what are they missing out on? What are they doing wrong maybe? Or maybe what are these AI startups doing right where you think they can catch up and they can compete with these closed source corporations?
I think we're going to see the same theme as we did with any other space, this innovator's dilemma kind of problem where incumbents are just slower and there's much more friction in adapting to new trends. And smaller startups are just nimble. And the velocity of shipping is much higher, for example. And at the space that AI is progressing at, these big companies just can't capture all these trends. I would love to see how these smaller startups adapt faster and what happens there. This is the only way you can beat a big company, is through just sheer velocity.
And you're hopeful.
Yeah, I think so. And again, what we need to figure out is how do we structure our ecosystem and our incentives to actually, our ecosystem should be conducive to this sort of behavior. Right. So if you're working at a research lab, if you're a student and if you're researching something cool and you want to commercialize it, how do we help you ship ridiculously fast? So you get through our mission economy, you get some sort of funding, and then you also get immediate distribution through Sentient Chat. You validate for your product market fit. You get this feedback, you improve, you scale through this huge developer community. And then, we're talking hopefully from idea to a product market fit in a couple months max.
Right. So the system you're talking about is meant to accelerate open source development. How long open source has
To overtake
closed source?
closed source. Well, I think the models will come late. The last thing where open source will dominate are the models, just because they're so capital intensive. But everywhere else, if it's not already dominating, it will in the next year or two. Yeah. So across the stack, in terms of agent frameworks, in terms of tools, in terms of even data, that's not proprietary. But all of these pipelines and everything across the stack will become state of the art in the open source.
That's a good thing to think about. Quite positive. I like ending off the show with hearing about what you're excited about. Lets me leech a little bit off of the positivity that you create. So yeah, tell me, what is the future you're excited about here?
I am personally very excited about applications of AI in the public sector. And this, we keep coming back to this, to my distrust of the government. But I think that automating workflows within the public sector will improve your experience with the government. And so it will improve efficiency, but it will also reduce this window for corruption. And for some reason, we just accept that dealing with the government, be it online or in person, is super tedious. And it's this like, you have to go even to like DMV, that sort of thing. But there's no reason why it can't be a chatbot guides you and that has infinite patience. It works 24/7. And so automating these workflows, and then the effect of it would be when you're dealing with, so if you're facilitating business to government interactions, I think the effect is going to be reducing corruption. This is what I'm going to stay at Sentient, but I think my next startup will be something around this. And Albania, for example, implemented this AI minister, not minister for AI, but actual minister that is AI for public procurement, because they had a huge corruption problem. And now everything around public procurement happens through this LLM, which is, it might be fallible, but it's not going to be corrupt. So we'll see. That's an interesting experiment to see play out.
Given that you've talked to a lot of people and you've talked to a lot of businesses, what would you say is the most unexpected thing you've learned about people in general?
This is something that I already knew, but I think BD validated it for me. There's this book that I'm currently reading, and Vivek is always clowning me for bringing a book with me and never actually reading it, but it's called Never Eat Alone. And the first lesson, and probably the main lesson of the book, is that you should be generous in your relationships, in a sense that the goal of, you shouldn't come into a relationship in a meeting with the goal, with a goal in mind. The instinct should always be to ask, what can I provide this person, and what value do I bring? And something interesting that happens is, if you go through life with this attitude, you start building a network, and suddenly you're in a place where you can actually get a ridiculous amount of value as well from these relationships. Not in an extractive way, but again, in a way where like, okay, what cool things can we build together? And I think, this is very interesting and very optimistic way. It's very conducive to happiness if you walk through life figuring out, how can I help people?
100% agree. Any last words that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, stay tuned for very, very cool stuff that will happen. And if you're building an open source, Sentient is the place to be.
Hope you guys enjoyed another episode of An Open Conversation. Thank you, Tony, for joining. And like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And we'll see you on the next one.